My detective husband investigated my murder. For 7 days without knowing it was me. Picture this. A detective stands over a mutilated body, examining every detail with his trained eyes. He's determined to catch the killer who left these remains right at the police station's doorstep. But there's something he doesn't know. The victim watching him is his own wife. For 7 days, Captain Cole has been investigating this gruesome murder, completely unaware that the body and pieces before him belongs to Rachel, the woman he married. Even when he traces the distinctive leg injury, even when he learns about the unborn child, he fails to see the truth staring him in the face. As Rachel's spirit hovers nearby, watching her husband show more compassion to her corpse than he ever did when she was alive, dark secrets begin to surface. Why did she desperately call him during her final moments? Why did he tell her to die somewhere else instead of helping? And what role did Luna, the woman he truly loved, play in this twisted tale of revenge? This is a story that will keep you guessing until the very end, where love turns to hatred, trust becomes betrayal, and a detective's greatest case might just be his greatest failure. If this kind of dark, suspenseful storytelling intrigues you, make sure to hit that like button and share it with others who enjoy psychological thrillers. Subscribe to catch more gripping stories that will make you question everything you think you know. Trust me, you won't want to miss what's coming next. Stay with us as we unravel this chilling tale of murder, deception, and justice served too late. I lay on the cold metal table, watching my husband examine my mutilated body. The irony was bitter. Just hours ago, when I desperately called him during my final moments, he was in our kitchen making soup for his old flame. "Stop with these stupid pranks," he had snapped before hanging up. "If you're going to die, do it somewhere else. I don't want to see it." He couldn't have known those would be his last words to me. That same night, they called him back to work. Captain Cole, the star of the detective squad, was needed for a particularly nasty case, a dismembered body found in pieces. It was almost funny watching him now, frowning at my remains, not recognizing his own wife lying there in pieces. He who had never taken more than 3 days to solve a case was now on day 7, still clueless that the victim was the wife he despised. The killer had been methodical, cutting me into pieces and stuffing me into 3 black bags, then dumping them right next to the police station, a bold move that felt like mockery. The coroner had worked through the night to put me back together, though my left leg remained missing at first. I watched as younger officers rushed outside to throw up, unable to handle the sight. The acid burns had left little of my flesh recognizable, another cruel touch from my murderer. When the coroner presented his report, his voice trembled slightly. "Female victim," he said, "probably 23 or 24 years old. Death by multiple blunt force traumas to the head, with sulfuric acid burns and a stomach wound. The pain must have been unbearable." Officer Leo's curse echoed through the morgue. What kind of monster dumps a body right at our doorstep? Cole stood there, examining what remained of me. "Not even 25, he murmured, almost sounding sad. He didn't know how right he was. I was just 24, with so much life ahead of me. The irony of him showing more compassion to my corpse than he ever did when I was alive wasn't lost on me. Then came the moment I was waiting for. As Cole's gloved hand traced the empty space where my left leg should be, an officer burst in with a plastic bag, my missing leg, found in the dumpster right under Cole's apartment. The coroner attached it, and there it was, the telltale sign of my identity. Years ago, I had broken that leg saving Cole's life, leaving me with a permanent limp and a distinctly deformed bone. As the coroner pointed out the unusual angle of the healed break, I wondered, would this finally be the clue that made my husband realize who he was really looking at? Officer Leo wasn't as quick to dismiss the coincidences as Cole. His eyes narrowed as he connected the dots, the dumpster location, the distinctive leg injury. "Captain, maybe you should call your wife," he suggested carefully, Cole's face hardened into a mask of irritation. Impossible. She called me at dawn, being dramatic as usual. I hovered nearby, my spirit aching at his dismissal. If only he knew that dawn call was my final desperate attempt to reach him, when pain had already stolen my voice. The contempt in Cole's voice when he mentioned me brought an unexpected peace. At least when he discovered my death, he wouldn't suffer much grief. He might even celebrate. Officer Leo shifted uncomfortably before pressing on. "Sir, it's dinner time, and we haven't heard from her. Given how close the crime scene is to your home," he let the words hang in the air. "We've checked the neighborhood. No one else is missing, but there was no answer at your apartment." For once, Cole didn't immediately brush off the concern. After a long pause, his face relaxed into a scornful smile. "She's done this before," he said, waving his hand dismissively. "Disappearing acts are her specialty. Anything to get attention. She'll turn up eventually." His words cut through me like knives. "She's quite the manipulator, you know. Don't let her innocent act fool you." He straightened his jacket. "Now, can we focus on actual police work?" The finality in his tone silenced everyone. No one dared mention me again, and I felt a fresh wave of despair. How would they solve my murder if they wouldn't even discuss me? I watched helplessly as Cole grew more frustrated with each passing day, the case that should have been so simple slipping through his fingers. Every missing person lead turned into another dead end, while I, the actual victim, lay right under his nose. Finally, after seeing Cole's exhaustion, Officer Leo convinced him to check our apartment. I followed as Cole stood at our front door, gathering himself before calling out my name. The silence that greeted him felt heavy, oppressive. He glanced around our home with barely concealed disgust. "I'm counting to 3, he announced to the empty rooms. "If you don't show yourself, don't bother coming back at all." My heart broke as I tried uselessly to respond. His patience snapped. "Fine, Rachel," he shouted, his voice echoing off the walls. "Play your games. Die out there for all I care. I won't come looking." He stormed toward the door, walking straight through my spiritual form. The cold hatred in his eyes made me freeze. This was more than annoyance or anger. Cole truly despised me, couldn't even stand being in spaces where I'd existed. But fate had other plans. Just as he reached for the door handle, something caught his eye: the voice recorder sitting on the entryway table. That small device held secrets that would change everything. I hovered anxiously near Cole, willing him to pick up the recorder. It was my safety net, a habit born from years of being ignored. Whenever I left the house, I'd leave a message explaining where I was going, knowing Cole might not read my texts or answer my calls for days. That little device by the door was my way of making sure he could find me if he ever wanted to. But Cole's reaction crushed my hopes. He picked up the recorder, his face twisting into a cruel smile before tossing it carelessly under the sofa. "Another one of your tricks, Rachel," he sneered. "Always plotting something." I desperately tried to reach for the fallen recorder, my ghostly hands passing through it helplessly. "Please, Cole," I begged to unhearing ears, "just listen to it once." But he was already walking away. Back at the station, his team crowded around him, genuine concern in their voices. "Did you find her, Captain? Is your wife okay?" Cole's response was cold, his fist clenching at his side. "She's fine," he spat out. "Out having fun somewhere, no doubt. Even left one of her stupid recorders to get my attention." His disgust was palpable. "Let's focus on what matters: the victim's leg injury. Check nearby hospitals for recent surgeries." For days, Cole buried himself in suspect files, dark circles forming under his eyes. Then a young officer interrupted with news that made my blood run cold. Luna was here to see him. I followed them to Cole's private lounge, a space I'd never been allowed to enter. Every time I'd brought him lunch, he'd made me wait outside the station. But Luna walked in like she owned the place. The intimacy between them was devastating to watch. Luna sat close to Cole, her fingers working at his temples with practiced familiarity. "You've been distant lately," she murmured. "Am I becoming a burden?" The tenderness in Cole's response felt like a knife through my heart. "Never," he assured her. "I promised to take care of you forever, and I meant it. I'm just caught up in this difficult case." Then he did something that shocked me. He shared confidential case details with her, erasing professional boundaries I'd never been allowed to cross. Luna's reaction was perfectly crafted, a delicate shudder as she wrapped her arms around him from behind. "How horrible," she whispered. "What kind of monster could do such things?" I watched them, feeling more alone than ever. Every gesture between them revealed the truth of my marriage. I had never truly been Cole's wife, just an inconvenient placeholder in a story that had always belonged to Luna. Luna pressed herself against Cole, playing the role of a frightened woman perfectly. "What if he comes after me next?" she whispered. I watched, waiting for Cole's inevitable reaction. He had always violently pushed me away whenever I tried to hug him from behind, claiming it was a professional reflex. But with Luna, his raised hand merely settled on her shoulder, offering gentle comfort. Another lie exposed. It wasn't about professional caution at all. He just hadn't wanted my touch. "I'll protect you," he promised her, his voice soft in a way I'd never heard before. "If you're ever in danger, call me. I don't care what I'm doing. I'll come running." The warmth between them was tangible until Luna skillfully brought me into the conversation. "I heard she hasn't been bringing you lunch lately," she mentioned carefully. "Should I leave before she shows up? You know how she gets." Cole's face hardened at the mention of me, but Luna wasn't finished. Her voice turned fragile, perfectly calculated. "I don't mind the abuse, really. Those slaps don't hurt much anymore. I just hate seeing you unhappy because of her." My ghostly form shook with disbelief. What lies had she been spinning? Cole pulled her closer, his voice turning to steel. "If she ever touches you again, I'll divorce her immediately." I saw the flash of triumph in Luna's eyes, though she kept her expression demure. Divorce. Of course. Our marriage had never been real to him. I was just an obstacle between him and Luna. At least death had solved that problem for everyone. Officer Leo's urgent voice broke their moment. "Captain, we have a lead." Cole jumped up, but even in his rush, he made sure to arrange an escort for Luna, repeatedly instructing the young officer to see her home safely. I followed them to where Leo stood, his fist bleeding from punching the wall in frustration. "We found something in the sewer," Leo said, his voice shaking. "A fetus, not even 3 months along. The coroner confirmed the victim had recently miscarried." I watched the color drain from Cole's face as something clicked in his mind, only to be immediately dismissed. "No," he muttered. "That was just another of Rachel's tricks to keep me." Leo looked up, and the weight of unspoken truth hung heavy in the air. The baby he had dismissed as a lie was now evidence in a murder case, his wife's murder case. "Captain, did something occur to you?" Leo's question hung in the air, interrupted by panicked footsteps. The officer who'd been checking hospital records burst in, breathless. "Captain, we found matches. The leg injury and pregnancy records. They're your wife's." Cole stood paralyzed as Leo reached for the file, but suddenly Cole lunged forward, snatching it away with trembling hands. "My wife?" His voice cracked with hysteria. "I'd know if she was pregnant. This is absurd." His knuckles turned white, gripping the file. "You all know her family background. Women from that family don't die easily." But this time, Leo stood his ground, his expression grave. "Captain, this isn't a joke, and there are still unanswered questions about what happened back then. You need to look at this file." Cole's response was explosive. "Lewis, are you questioning my judgment? She left me a recorder at home today. It can't be her." As I watched this unfolding, the phantom pain in my chest felt real. Everyone except Cole had doubted the events of the past, but he'd never listened to my side. Luna was the only voice he heard. The memories flooded back, bitter and sweet. Our families had been connected through business. My father and Luna's dad were partners in a joint venture. I met Luna through her brother Lucas in college. Back then, she was dating the campus heartthrob, while Cole, already infatuated with her, kept interfering in her life. Luna always brushed him off, claiming their childhood friendship made him more like a brother. But Cole remained protective, treating her like the little girl she'd once been, disapproving of her relationships despite her being an adult. Then Luna approached me with what seemed like an innocent plan. She painted Cole in glowing colors, suggesting I pursue him to divert his attention, freeing her to live her life. I fell hard for Cole from our first meeting, chasing him with all my heart. When he finally returned my feelings, I thought I'd found my fairy tale. At our wedding, his kiss on my forehead came with promises of eternal love and trust. Everything seemed perfect until the company crisis hit. My father's and Lucas's business faced a cash flow crisis, leaving workers unpaid and sparking protests. What I didn't know then was how this financial disaster would become the catalyst for my own tragedy. The company crisis turned deadly when an enraged worker stormed the office and killed Lucas. With his last breath, Lucas delivered a calculated lie that would destroy my family. He accused my father of secretly moving assets and planning to escape overseas, blaming him for the entire financial collapse. No one questioned his dying declaration. My father became public enemy number one overnight. Our home turned into a battleground. Workers gathered outside, hurling dead rats and bags of blood at our door, their curses echoing through the walls. Terrified, I called Cole for help, but his response froze my blood. "Your father killed Luna's dad," he spat. "Even meeting me was part of your scheme, wasn't it? You just had to take everything that belonged to Luna." I tried desperately to explain. Yes, Luna had suggested I pursue him, but my love was real. "Enough of your lies," he cut me off. "Just know this, I'll take care of Luna for the rest of my life." That night changed everything. My father sat with me one last time, his hand gentle on my head as he confessed the truth. He had made a terrible mistake in trusting Lucas as a business partner. That fatal day, he had caught Lucas preparing to flee with the company's money. Their argument was overheard by the worker who later killed Lucas. "I never imagined he would use his dying breath to frame me," my father said quietly. "People always believe a dying man's words, don't they? Even if that man lived dishonestly, they say death brings truth." His eyes filled with tears. "Rachel, I can't prove my innocence, but I won't drag you down with me." Before I could stop him, he pushed me away and ran to the roof. I chased him, calling Cole repeatedly in desperation. But while my father plunged to his death like a broken kite, my husband was busy comforting Luna to sleep. When Cole finally learned about my father's suicide, his reaction was pure contempt. What did he think that would accomplish? Does he think his death pays for anything? The workers still need their money. Can his death bring back Lucas, or even the worker who killed him? I tried everything to make Cole understand the truth, but his response cut deeper than any knife. "You're disgusting, Rachel. Like father, like daughter. Now you're trying to smear Lucas's name? You're even more repulsive than I thought. You and your family should have been the ones to die. Poor Luna is the real victim here." Has it ever occurred to you, Cole? If my father was really guilty, why didn't the police find any stolen money in his accounts after his death? But these questions didn't matter anymore. I was dead now, finally freeing Cole to be with Luna without interference. The tension in the room was suffocating as Leo watched Cole clutching the folder. "Captain," Leo said softly, "what if it really is your wife? By blocking our investigation, you're letting her killer walk free." Cole's hands trembled violently as he finally opened the folder, revealing my medical history. The leg surgery 6 months ago. The pregnancy confirmed 3 months back. The color drained from Cole's face as the memories crashed over him. That earthquake 6 months ago. He had rushed to find Luna, blind to the chandelier about to crash down on him. I had instinctively pushed him clear, my leg taking the impact instead. But even then, he had shoved me away, his words venomous. "You vile woman, trying to stop me from saving Luna even now. Get away from me." He had run out, leaving me trapped beneath the rubble. 3 days and nights passed before I was rescued, while Cole had already found Luna and taken her to safety. The delayed rescue left me with a permanent limp, but Cole refused to believe it was real. "Playing games even during an earthquake?" he had sneered, pretending to be lame for sympathy. 3 months ago, on the anniversary of my father's death, things had gotten worse. During an argument, Cole had grabbed me by the neck, tearing at my clothes. "You must really love me," he had taunted, "still clinging to me no matter how badly I treat you. How pathetic can you be, Rachel?" That same month, I discovered I was pregnant. For the first time in years, I felt pure joy. Finally, someone in this world would share my blood. I had called Cole, excited to share the news, only to be met with fury. "Another one of your tricks?" he had snarled. "You think getting pregnant is that easy? What am I, some miracle worker who gets you pregnant in one try?" Now, sitting in his office, Cole looked like a man struck by lightning as the truth began to sink in. All the pieces were falling into place, revealing a horror he had been too blind to see. "How? This can't be possible." Cole's voice cracked. "The child. Where is the child?" As if on cue, an officer burst in with a document. "Captain Cole, DNA results confirm it. The child was yours." Before the officer could finish, Cole bolted to the morgue like a man possessed. I hovered near my body and our unborn child, gently reaching out to them. "I'm sorry, little one. Mommy couldn't protect you." Cole approached, oblivious to the morgue's stench, his hands stretching toward us. Leo and his team rushed to restrain him. "Captain, please calm down." But Cole had snapped. His eyes blazed red as he fought against his own men. "That's my wife and child," he roared. "Who the hell are you to keep me from them?" I felt a bitter twist in my heart. It was the first time he'd ever acknowledged me as his wife, but it came too late. I was already dead, just as he'd wished so many times before. They finally subdued him with sedatives. When he awoke in the hospital, it was as if his breakdown had never happened. Luna appeared, throwing herself into his arms with practiced concern. "Cole, I was so worried." His expression softened as he tucked her hair behind her ear. "I'm fine, but you shouldn't have come. Your health is delicate." Every word from Luna, no matter how trivial, received his gentle attention. When Leo entered and saw them together, his face darkened. Clearing his throat, he announced, "Captain, we have leads on the case." Back at the precinct, Cole was the picture of professional detachment, as if the victim wasn't his wife at all. I couldn't help but smile bitterly. This was the Cole I knew. Leo presented their findings. The suspects were former workers from the construction site, seeking revenge for unpaid wages that had led to family tragedies. Since my father was already dead, they had turned their vengeance on me. "Wade was spotted near your building recently," Leo explained, "likely planning the attack." Cole's relief was palpable. Of course, it was their family's fault all along. They brought this on themselves. He had found his perfect excuse to rationalize my death. Leo stared at him, horrified by his response. I watched as my husband Cole stood there, silent, his eyes closed tight while his partner spoke. "Captain, how can you be so cold? That was your wife, my friend Rachel. She went through hell before she died. She deserves better than this." The words hung heavy in the air. Finally, they'd caught the killer. I should have felt peace, but something else nagged at me as I watched Cole drive to Luna's house, again. Even with a murder to solve, he always found time for her. The bitter truth stung. He never made time for me when I was alive. Luna's apartment was warm and cozy as she hung onto Cole's arm, her eyes bright with curiosity. "Tell me about this case," she begged, stirring her soup. "It's been months. Have you found out who died?" The way she asked made my spirit shiver. "It was Rachel," Cole said simply. The soup spoon clattered against the bowl, liquid splashing onto the table. I noticed something in Luna's eyes. Was that fear? Or something else? Cole grabbed a napkin, cleaning up the mess. "You're so clumsy," he teased. But Luna's hand shot out to grab his. "How did she die? Are you sure it was her?" "Don't worry," Cole soothed, missing the strange gleam in her eyes. "I'll keep you safe." Of course he didn't see it. I'd been the wall between them for years, clutching my role as Mrs. Cole like a shield. Now that I was gone, their love could bloom freely. The team had tracked down Wade, the killer. But he surprised everyone by stopping his game of hide-and-seek. Bold as brass, he showed up at Luna's door dressed as a delivery man, forcing his way in with a knife. Cole arrived minutes later, his gun drawn. "Step away from her," Cole growled. Wade looked different now. Dangerous, unhinged. He pressed the blade closer to Luna's throat, laughing. "Well, well, Captain Cole. You got here fast. Shame you weren't this quick when your wife needed you. Remember her last phone call?" Cole's face turned to stone. "What are you saying?" Cole's voice was deadly quiet. Wade's smile grew wider. "Don't pretend. You know I killed her. That night, she kept calling for you, fighting to stay alive for hours just to reach you. But you hung up, didn't you? If you'd seen her face in that moment," Wade's voice dripped with cruel pleasure. "I should thank you, really. After you rejected her call, she just gave up. Didn't fight back no matter what I did. And that's how your baby died too." Cole's eyes turned red with rage, veins pulsing in his forehead as the terrible truth sank in. Cole's face contorted with a primal rage I'd never seen before, blood trickling from where he'd bitten his lip. "You sick bastard! I'll kill you!" His roar echoed through the apartment. As I watched, memories of that terrible night crashed over me like waves, each one threatening to drown my soul. The pain felt fresh, raw, as if my spirit was being shredded anew. Wade tightened his grip on Luna, his smirk growing wider. "Isn't it ironic, Captain? If this sweet little thing hadn't pointed me in the wrong direction, your wife might still be alive. Yet here you are, playing her knight in shining armor." He pressed the knife closer, drawing a thin line of blood. "I wonder what your dear wife thinks, watching from above as you protect her replacement." The words hit Cole like physical blows. Something snapped in his eyes, and he charged forward like a man possessed. Luna's scream pierced the air. "Stop! He'll kill me!" Her face streaked with tears. She looked absolutely terrified. Cole froze mid-stride, the rational part of his mind wrestling back control. Wade's mocking whistle cut through the tension. My. She really knows how to pull your strings, doesn't she, Captain? But tell me, Cole, has she shared all her secrets with you?" Wade's words dripped with dark amusement. Luna's legs shook violently, her face draining of color. "Don't listen to him," she pleaded, voice trembling. "He's a murderer. Cole, please, I'm so scared." Behind his back, Cole's fingers wrapped around his gun, waiting for the right moment. It came in a blur of motion. Luna suddenly thrashed against Wade's grip, throwing him off balance. Cole drew and fired in one fluid motion, but Luna's movement changed everything. Instead of hitting Wade's shoulder as intended, the bullet tore through his throat. He crumpled to the floor, blood bubbling from his mouth as his body convulsed one final time before going still. I watched Luna closely in the aftermath. She huddled near the wall, seemingly paralyzed by shock. But for just a moment, when she thought no one was looking, her lips curved into the faintest smile. My heart sank. Another chance to expose the truth. lost forever. Cole gathered her in his arms and carried her out while crime scene technicians swarmed the apartment. Later, sitting alone in his car, Cole pored over Wade's file. The story it told was tragic. A simple construction worker, desperate for unpaid wages that would have saved his mother's life. Unable to afford her surgery and unwilling to burden her family, she'd taken her own life. Her death had broken Wade's father, who followed her shortly after. Wade's rage had initially focused on Roger, my former boss, but finding Roger already dead, he'd turned his vendetta on me instead. The investigation revealed something crucial. The missing money that had started this deadly chain of events led back to Lucas, Luna's father. He'd been the company's financial officer at the time, holding the power of life and death in his ledger books without ever knowing it. The truth about Wade's path to me finally came clear. He'd gone to Luna first, seeking answers about the missing money. She'd pointed him straight to me, claiming my father had stolen the funds and given them to me. That lie drove Wade over the edge. He caught me in the parking lot of the grocery store, knocked me out, and took me to that terrible place. For 5 endless hours, he tortured me, slaps turning to acid on my skin, clumps of my hair scattered on the floor, demanding to know where I'd hidden money I'd never had. Through it all, I told him the same truth. My father was innocent. Lucas, Luna's father, had taken everything. Only after my death did Wade start to question Luna's story. He went back to her, confronted her. Now those 2 meetings were documented in the case files spread across Cole's desk. Luna sat in the interrogation room, a suspect at last. "Cole, please," she whimpered, clutching his hand like a lifeline. "Why are you doing this to me? I don't know anything." But something had changed. Cole didn't rush to comfort her, didn't offer soft words or gentle touches. Wade's final confession had cracked his blind faith. "Are you sure you know nothing, Luna?" His voice was ice. She kept insisting on her innocence, but without hard evidence, they had to let her go. I watched her stumble out of the police station, swaying like she might faint. Cole followed, his eyes hard. "Luna, tell me the truth. Were you involved in Rachel's death?" Something shifted in her then. Despite her tears, despite her trembling, her next words cut like knives. "When she died," Luna sneered, "you said it yourself. If she had to die, she should die far away. You didn't want her dirtying your sight, remember?" The color drained from Cole's face. His lips quivered, and his eyes fluttered rapidly, like he was fighting back tears. After Luna walked away, he slid down the wall to the ground. His composure shattered completely. Deep, racking sobs shook his body as tears streamed down his face. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. Were these tears really for me? How could they be? His last words to me still burned in my memory. "Get lost. Stop playing games. If you're really dying, do it far away. Don't dirty my sight." Luna tried to flee the country, but Cole's team caught her at the airport. Back in interrogation, she finally cracked. "What right do you have?" she screamed, all pretense of fragility gone. "Cole, I know you can hear me. You promised to take care of me forever. You promised." I looked down at Cole as Luna's screams echoed through the interrogation room. His eyes had turned to ice, filled with a hatred I'd never seen before. Was this really the same man who'd been so devoted to her? Leo's fist hit the table, cutting through Luna's hysteria. "We found the money," Leo said coldly. "Your secondary account. There's quite a paper trail. You've spent a lot over the years, but the original amount matches what disappeared from your father's company. It was your father's plan to steal it and run, wasn't it? And Rachel's father discovered everything." Luna's mask finally cracked. She threw her head back and laughed, a horrible, hysterical sound that went on and on until she was choking on it. 3 years, she wheezed. It took you idiots 3 whole years to figure this out. You're all trash. Even you, Cole. So what if you've caught me? Can that bitch come back to life? What did you tell Wade when you met him before Rachel's death? Leo demanded. But Luna ignored him, fixing her gaze on the door instead. Hey, Cole, she called out, voice dripping with malice. Don't forget, you helped kill her too. You hung up when she begged for help. Wade was just like you, so easy to manipulate. A few sweet words and he hated Rachel instantly. The things he did to her, she giggled. And that baby of yours, he even... The door exploded inward. Cole moved like lightning, his hands finding Luna's throat. He lifted her clean off the chair, her legs kicking uselessly in the air. Her face turned purple as she clawed at his grip. Cole's handsome features had transformed into something terrible, consumed by rage and grief. "You monster!" he roared. "How dare you hurt my Ray like that? You should have died instead. You should have..." Leo tried to pull him back, shouting for him to stop, but Cole was beyond hearing. I watched it all, feeling something strange stir in my spirit. "Cole," I whispered, "what's the point now?" He threw Luna to the floor like a broken doll. She lay unconscious as Cole staggered back, gasping like he'd been underwater. His hair was wild, eyes red with tears, voice raw with emotion. "Ray, is that you? I can hear you. Don't worry. I'll make her pay. She deserves to die. She should have died instead." I shook my head sadly. "Wait for me," he pleaded. "I'll find you again." He stared right through me, tears streaming down his tortured face. I felt myself beginning to fade, carried away by an unseen wind. As my spirit dispersed, I whispered one last time, "Goodbye, Cole." The truth finally emerged, but at what cost? Rachel's spirit watched as her husband Cole realized the devastating reality. He had failed the one person who truly loved him. Luna's manipulative web unraveled, revealing her role in orchestrating Rachel's death through Wade. The missing company money, the lies that destroyed Rachel's family, and the cruel dismissal of her final desperate call for help, all pieces of a tragic puzzle that came together too late. In that interrogation room, as Luna's true nature emerged through her chilling confession, Cole's world shattered completely. His hands around Luna's throat showed a rage born not just from hatred, but from unbearable guilt. The man who once couldn't bear Rachel's touch now broke down at the mere whisper of her presence, begging for a second chance that would never come. Rachel's final moments as a spirit carried no hatred, no desire for revenge. Instead, they held only a quiet sadness for what could have been, the life unlived, the child unborn, and the love that died long before her body was found in those black bags. As her spirit began to fade, carried away by an unseen wind, Rachel left behind not just a solved case, but a broken man forever haunted by his blindness. Her last whispered "Goodbye, Cole" wasn't just an ending, it was the final release of a love that had endured despite everything. Sometimes justice comes too late. Sometimes the truth hurts more than lies. And sometimes, the real monsters aren't the ones who wield the knife, but those who turn away when we need them most. Remember to support the channel by liking, sharing, and subscribing for more haunting stories that remind us, in life and love, nothing is ever quite what it seems.